After having made my bean stew, now I'll go ahead and show you how to make plantains to go with the bean stew. But first of all, I want to show you the difference between banana and then plantains. There are different degrees of ripeness of the plantain. So depending on how ripe it is, you can prepare it in various ways. This way, you can peel it and then cook it or roast it. If it's halfway done, it's soft, you can equally peel it, cook it, or roast it. When it's very soft, it looks like banana, but they are very different. This one you need to cook it. This one you can just eat it raw. So this is the difference between the plantain and the banana. But they are times known as plantain bananas around here. Anyway, so having said that, I'll go ahead and use only the very ripe plantain. This one was for demonstration purposes, just to show you the various degrees of ripeness of the plantain before you use it when it's very ripe at this stage. So you need to cut one end off and this end, then slit it this way, and using your hands, you separate them this way. Then there's always this material there, so you can scrape it off with a knife, and it's ready to go. Some prefer to wash their plantains, so for that matter, I'm going to do this and put in the water, which I'll be cutting later. Some also prefer not to cut them because the tin is already clean within the shell here. So for that reason, I'll just do this and cut it into smaller, thin slices. So you can cut them oblong, like I'm showing you for this one. The next one, I'm going to show you another way of cutting. So you cut off the end and this end. And depending on how ripe, there are some plantains that are more ripe than this. When it's very ripe, you can mix it with some corn, fermented corn flour and all-purpose flour, and you can make very great. Add some ginger, get some spicy appetizer out of it. So I cut this one oblong. Now I'll show you how to cut the others. You can just cut them circular. There you go. So for this one that I washed, it's a great idea to pat it right to make cutting easier. I like to cut them oblong, so I'll continue with my oblong shape. Be careful with the knife. You can use a chopping board if you want. So easy to do. And with this degree of ripeness, if you want to roast them, you have to cut them a little bigger. In roasting, you can just divide this into 3 or into 2 and roast it in the oven, but best done over charcoal fire. And the roasted plantain goes very well with roasted peanuts. So remember, it's cased up, it's not dirty. Some prefer to wash their plantains before they cut them open. Excuse me. I like them oblong. So when I finish cutting, all I'll have to do after cutting is to slightly salt them. You do not have to use salt if you don't want to do it. But when you add a little salt, it brings out a lot of the sweetness. So I'm just going to sprinkle this, a little water, just to enable the salt to dissolve. Just a little salt. That's good. You toss it all up. And use your hands to mix. Then I'll fry in heated oil. In frying the plantains, you can use any vegetable oil that you want. So I'm using canola oil, but any other vegetable oil should be fine. Extra virgin oil is much preferred, the lighter one. So another difference that I forgot to show you is if you peel back this banana, you can see that the ripeness of the banana and the plantain are entirely different. So you see, this has a brighter color. this is kind of pale. Now it's time for me to test the heated up oil here to see if it's ready to put the plantain in. So I'm using a toothpick, and then if you see bubbles coming out, then it's ready. Can you see the bubbles? It looks like my oil is heated here. There are bubbles coming off the toothpick. If you dip it in the hot oil, hopefully it's zoomed in enough for you to see, which is an indication that it's time to put the plantains in. So I'm using a tongue here to put the plantains in. This is a huge frying pan. Oops. It's a great idea to be careful when you're putting the plantains in, or else the oil is going to spill. So I'm going to fry this in 2 batches. And when we were growing up, the plantains that they sold were cut into much bigger sizes before frying. So I'm going to leave this in until one side becomes light golden brown, then I flip it over. After 6 to 7 minutes of cooking, you can see that the edges are getting brown, so it's time for me to flip this over. Could you have added less oil? Yes, you could have added less oil, but there are many ways of frying plantains. So I'll flip this over and equally let it cook until the other side is like golden brown. So it's always a great idea to separate the plantains when you put them in so that they don't stick together like this one just did. So after having flipped them over, I'll let it cook on the other side for about 5 to 6 minutes again until it's brown like this side, and I take it all out. This looks ready to take out. If you want it a little darker, you can do that. So I have some paper towels on this tray to absorb the excess oils. And when you take out, it's a great idea to separate them. This wasn't an overly ripe plantain. If they were overly ripe, they would have been sticking together even in the pot. Okay, then I'll put the second batch in. So very careful when you're putting this in. And after putting in, you just have to separate them and let them cook until they get light golden brown like the first batch. Okay. It's time to flip over the plantains. This is the second batch. So after I flip over, I'll cook until it's light golden brown like the first one, then I'll take it out. The second batch is about ready. So I'll start taking out those that are light golden brown. Putting it on the paper towel here to absorb the excess fat, excess oil. So this is a meal packed with potassium, vitamin A, C, magnesium, tons of vitamins. So I'll continue taking out till I'm done, then I plate with the bean stew that I made earlier. This is the finished product. Fried plantains and bean stew, popularly known as red.